To preface, I think it's fair to say that I do enjoy watching anime. This also isn't an anime is for losers video. But anime sucks. I've given up hope. I've been consistently watching anime for at least 5 years, and I don't have a single show that I'll remember well in a decade. And that matters. Except for A Silent Voice. But then they made Liz and the Bluebirds, so that's a movie. Anime shows, no promise. Some of my earliest memories are watching what I would consider the classics. Neon Genesis Evangelion, Cowboy Bebop, Ghost in the Shell, and of course, Azumanga Daioh. These all came out before I could even read, let alone talk. After those, none of the anime coming out reach 8 out of 10, let alone 7, and I'm being generous. I'm not talking about animation, such as Studio Trigger or Kyoto Animation, because they do look beautiful. The problem is that their stories run amok haphazard themes. Story writing is the main problem, above all else.
By a long mile, or kilometer, if you fancy that.
Whenever I watch an anime, even if I have hope or am interested in it, I'm constantly thinking about how it could be meaningful and well executed. I understand that some shows aren't meant to be taken seriously. I enjoy the anime comedies the most because they are what they promise. It's that there is an endless litany of shows that try to be taken seriously. Re:Zero, Code Geass, Darling in the Franxx, Kill la Kill, and Violet Evergarden. At the very least, they intend to have a few moments of serious meaning, but they fail hard almost every time. I think it comes down to the fact that either the writers don't want to question anything or don't really know how to. Good story writing comes out of the thematic uncertainty of the conflict or characters. It's not meaningful if nothing is at stake. Art speaks for itself. I already stated my favorite Evangelion, but to cross the seas, Breaking Bad, 6 or 7 ace of Game of Thrones, and True Detective. It is hard to compare and not see the differences. But if you've noticed, those are all live action, and in perfect honesty, the West might be no better when it comes to animation. While well-done animations like Into the Spider-Verse or Avatar The Last Airbender exist, they don't delve the depths quite like anime has or feels comfortable to, although Ratatouille is a 10 in my book. It's aggravating, because anime does have the potential but is severely squandered with fan service, and I don't mean that only in its literal sense. There is escapism and complacency that chokes any nuance out of these potentially great anime. It's no secret that there are tons of anime that boils down to feel-good content, and that alone isn't a problem. I'm not someone so ostentatious to just watch masterpieces or nothing.
I can get down with Chio-chan, Kazuma, or Deku.
The problem is that it's done in a disingenuous way, made specifically to ignore reality.
It's ironic that the anime community groans and makes jokes about harems and simple power stories, but when it's done in a slightly unique way, they fawn over it.
Two easy targets are My Hero Academia and Re:Zero. My Hero's first 2 seasons were the strongest, but then it fell off. The thematic tension began to disappear. They lost focus of what in the story really matters. It fully has the potential to engage in a story about what it means to be a hero,
not only in fighting, but to the society.
The problem is that the episodes and fights are bloated thematically. In order for a fight to have tension, it has to be significant who wins, and tell us something about the character's philosophy manifested in battle, victory, and failure. Unfortunately, many fights, especially in Season 4, boil down to who goes plus ultra faster or better. To make it meaningfully tense, you have to criticize your protagonist, which is not easy, but that's what's necessary to make the heroes really struggle and to show what it really means to be a hero. The show has taken a tepid stance that as long as you want to win and to be a hero for vaguely good reasons, then it's fine. And while they have killed characters and ended hero careers, they haven't had an equal opposite of solidarity for these events. Spoiler warning, but when Night Eye loses unto death, Deku beats Overhaul, avenging Night Eye, with Eri's help and goes all out. But it is almost meaningless because they do not define why and how he convinced Eri being his key to victory. Likewise, anime tends to regard shouting truce as a surefire way to convince someone of something. In reality, in the heat of a moment, it's never guaranteed that just words will affect people. I couldn't suspend my belief that all Deku had to do was shout to her that it's okay, and then she changed her mind. In a more realistic interpretation of her character, she would have been subject to very severe trauma, and such trauma is not resolved by telling someone that they're wrong or just to believe or to do a certain thing. And that leads into ReZero. People just don't fawn over you or decide to be buddies because you're nice, or even if you do give them a good proposition.
ReZero's effective themes are not a rehabilitation of an otaku. It lacks the emotional and logistical verisimilitude to enrich otaku's understanding of our world to become functioning individuals.
At the end of each arc, Subaru flawlessly befriends literally everyone except the bad guys. A similar belief proliferates that if you do the right thing, people will reciprocate. I know this to be rarely true. It takes a similar amount of effort or character development for a person to reciprocate, especially if there's ever been any ill will between the two parties. It doesn't matter that Subaru can retry. There are people and events that just won't change. Any person who has struggled to achieve a goal will tell you that there are situations to which there is no perfect answer. That is ReZero's biggest problem. Whether intentional or not, it intimates that if you had had the chance to try again, you could achieve a perfect path. I know of some future spoilers that would argue that, but it doesn't matter, because the body of work that currently exists as the ReZero anime has this problem. Fans would argue that a thing is explained in the future so the story doesn't lose credibility, but that's not good story writing. In order for a story to be believable, it needs to have foreshadowing, otherwise it is haphazard and lazy. Take the 2 or last eighth of Game of Thrones. While it is unsure what happened behind the scenes, it is undeniable that it wasn't foreshadowed properly. Speaking lazily, anime also struggles with a complacent and blasé tone. Even when we have anime about stuff that would genuinely traumatize or change a person, the same person recovers from it like it's just the sniffles, just in time for the punchline. It's common to see complaints that Shinji and Evangelion should just toughen up, or that the audience themselves would fare better. But that's some mecha hecka baloney. What matters is that it's Shinji's story, where his head is at, and what he feels and experiences. So when an obviously troubled and depressed teen is forced to fight angels for his father's selfish plans, it's not gonna be a fun or easy time. This tone bleeds viciously across all anime genres, leaving studio and or manga writers the chance to skip out and make content quicker without worrying whether their characters are realistic. That quick production time is a factor too. It's well understood that both manga authors and studios can easily be hard-pressed for time. Rushing always affects the outcome of art negatively. A good example is Atsushi Okubo, who is the manga author of Soul Eater and Fire Force. It shouldn't be a stretch to say that Soul Eater is superior. While Okubo was working on Soul Eater, he was publishing in a monthly magazine. Fire Force was and is done weekly. The change from 4 weeks to 1 is massive. In fairness, I've only watched the anime counterparts, and they were helmed by 2 different studios. But even amidst the telephone effect of quality, it's clear to see time can and does affect many published manga. The biggest offenders are the longest running, whose verisimilitude has been run through the ground. Regarding the production of anime, the biggest problem is not only the tepidness of businessmen to make bold creative statements, but also the culture that has been formed around anime in the last decade or 2. As far as I can tell, no one really decries or criticizes this content in a thematic sense. The sad truth is that lewd content sells, complacent feel-good anime that pretends to be serious sells, because the culture of weebs and otaku encourage it. You can't complain about the lack of depth or meaning and own a body pillow at the same time. While the surface of the anime community expresses disdain at times, there is undoubtedly a massive portion of the fans that totally love and buy into the reductive content. Ever since Steam started allowing adult-only rated games, there has consistently been lewd anime games on the new and trending list. I'm just trying to keep up with the latest games. Jeez. Of course people can legally do what they want. But this encouragement of lewd with high sales and purchases only encourages manga, anime, and anime game companies to continue to make this type of content even more. Funimation recently had the Interspecies Reviewers fiasco, where they and even Japanese TV channels dropped it because it was just too crazy. The increment of lewd content will only desensitize watchers more in a potential endless cycle. While I don't think it'll take over the entirety of content made, it definitely leaves a smaller margin of actual content, which is already small. In the end, why care? But I truly believe that anime could teach us and enrich soul, being, and mind, just as many movies, shows, songs, games, and books have in other genres. But there has been a distinct regression in genuine self-contemplation in anime. The mix of economic and societal desires prevent anime from being something more. But I don't blame the creatives or business in the studio solely. I came across a very good manga in Barnes & Noble's,
The Gods Lie,
and it contained the care and meaning that is missing. But as far as I know, it has not been adapted. I do understand anime is backlogged and they make new seasons of already old popular manga. But it is my sneaking suspicion that there is a secret treasure trove of manga that doesn't get ported outside Japan or to anime. It's possible that they're not big or popular enough, or that they're too uneasy for studios or booksellers to take a chance on when they can just distribute more Boruto. The potential irony to some is that such a hope resides in capitalism. If we, the consumer, were to begin to want and demand more out of anime, it is very possible we could see a change in the stories chosen and made. But I understand I'm just one voice, in the midst of a world of many equally strong-headed people. That's why I've given up hope for a true piece of art to manifest, specifically in show form. I will continue to watch anime, I will continue to laugh, and I will continue to criticize it. What I also understand, not only from an art standpoint but from history, is that all things ebb and flow. There will come a time when a great anime show will be made,
whether by the determination of one person, their luck, or the consumers.
That is why I will wait.